You know, if you look at what's happening on the world stage right now, it feels less like news and more like a high-stakes political thriller, right? And it's all happening in real time. So in this explainer, we're going to dive into that. We're going to break down these rising global tensions. But we're going to focus on a really central and kind of surprising theory from our source material. It's about a single flashpoint that could potentially ignite a global conflict.
So, the source material we're looking at basically argues that the world is simmering. You can feel it, right? There's this tension in the air, this feeling that we're on the brink of something big. And what's really spooky is that it feels eerily similar to the periods just before the huge wars of the 20th century. So the big question is this just a feeling, or are we actually witnessing the buildup to World War III?
Well, history tells us one thing for sure. Huge global conflicts don't just happen overnight. They're not a sudden thing. I mean, you look at World War I, you look at World War II. Both of them were the result of decades of escalating tensions, shifting alliances, all these unresolved issues just bubbling under the surface. And that's the core argument here, that we're in a similar period of buildup right now. It's this long, slow burn that could eventually lead to a massive global explosion.
Okay, so to really get a handle on all this global tension, our source zeroes in on one pretty surprising potential flashpoint: Greenland. Yeah, Greenland. I know, it might seem kind of remote, maybe even a little random, but this whole scenario actually serves as a perfect little microcosm, a mini version, if you will, of the much larger power struggles, the clashing ambitions, and the really fragile alliances that are defining our world today. So, according to the source, here's where things really start to escalate. It points to a pretty aggressive American stance. The claim is that the US interest isn't about buying Greenland anymore. It's about taking it. And the justification for a move like that? The argument is that if the US doesn't act fast, Russia or China will beat them to it and set up shop there, which is, right on America's doorstep. Which, of course, raises the big question: why Greenland and why now? I mean, this isn't a new idea. The US has tried to get its hands on Greenland multiple times over the last 100 years. So what makes it so absolutely critical right at this moment? Okay, so the source material looks at the most common theories and pretty much dismisses them. Like, is it all about natural resources? Well, sure, Greenland has oil, gas, and uranium, but it doesn't even rank in the top 5 globally for those things. So that's probably not the main reason. What about blocking China? The source says that's unlikely too. China's main economic interests are really elsewhere. And besides, Greenland has already told them no on their major mining project. The real reason, according to our source, is all about strategy, pure and simple. Owning Greenland means you control the Arctic, but even more critically, it's about missile defense. Think about it. The shortest path for an intercontinental ballistic missile, an ICBM, from Russia to North America is right over the Arctic. So a base in Greenland would be an absolutely invaluable early warning system, a game changer. And this is where the stakes get just incredibly high. Because Greenland isn't its own country, right? It's a territory of Denmark, and Denmark is a founding member of NATO. Now, at the very heart of the NATO treaty is this little thing called Article 5. It's the principle of collective defense. Basically, it's the all for one and one for all clause of global politics. So the potential fallout here is just immense. I mean, just imagine, if the US, the leader of NATO, were to invade the territory of another member, Article 5 would be totally meaningless overnight. The source argues that the entire 75-year-old alliance could literally shatter. You've already got key European powers like France, Germany, and Italy voicing their support for Denmark, which sets the stage for a complete and catastrophic collapse of the West's main military alliance.
But look, this whole Greenland scenario, as dramatic as it sounds, isn't happening in a vacuum. It's just one potential spark in what our source describes as a global tinderbox, one that's already filled to the brim with active conflicts and simmering tensions.
And man, the list of these flashpoints is long. Each one could be a catalyst. You've got the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. You have China constantly eyeing Taiwan. There are intense internal protests rocking Iran. You have rivalries between former allies playing out in places like Yemen. North Korea is always testing missiles. The Middle East is, well, the Middle East. It's always volatile. And then you have India managing these really complex border situations. The stage, as our source puts it, is well and truly set. So let's say the worst happens. A major conflict erupts. What would that even look like? Who would be on which side?
Well, the source actually lays out a potential breakdown of a new world order, where all the countries start picking their teams. Basically, our source predicts two big opposing blocs. On one side, you'd have a US-led alliance. That would probably include the traditional NATO partners, plus key allies like Japan, South Korea, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Taiwan. And then, facing off against them, you'd have a bloc led by Russia and China, and they would likely pull countries like Iran, North Korea, Venezuela, and Syria into their orbit. Now, if we're just talking about conventional military strength, tanks, planes, soldiers, the global firepower index puts the USA at number 1. But Russia and China are right behind them. And here's the thing, conventional firepower is only part of the story. Because then, you have the nuclear equation. And according to the data in our source, Russia possesses this many nuclear warheads. And this is the number for the United States. When you see those two numbers side by side, it just starkly illustrates the world-ending potential of any direct conflict between these powers. It's a lot. This all raises a really crucial question, one the source also dives into. What about a major rising power like India? I mean, with the world's largest population and a booming economy, where they stand could be absolutely decisive. The analysis suggests that India is going to choose a path of strategic neutrality. They've been cultivating what's called a multi-alignment policy. Basically, they're maintaining strong diplomatic and economic ties with everybody, the US, Russia, and China, all at the same time. The goal is pretty simple. Avoid getting pulled into any one camp, protect their own sovereignty, and look after their own interests without getting dragged into a global war. And finally, our source paints a pretty grim picture of what a third world war would actually look like. This wouldn't just be soldiers on a battlefield. No, this would be a conflict fought on entirely new fronts, with absolutely devastating consequences for, well, everyone. See, the main weapons wouldn't just be guns and bombs, they'd be data and code. We're talking about cyber warfare that could cripple entire infrastructures. We're talking about economic strangulation, using sanctions and controlling supply chains as a key tactic. And maybe, most terrifyingly, the war would target the absolute essentials of civilian life. Your access to food, fuel, electricity, even medicine, causing just mass suffering far, far away from any physical frontline. And all of this really brings us back to that famous, haunting quote from Albert Einstein. He said, "I know not with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones." And his point was so clear. A modern global war, fought with these new weapons of mass disruption and destruction, could literally unravel civilization as we know it. It kind of leaves us with a chilling thought, doesn't it? In a war like that, the goal can't just be about winning. The real challenge is making sure there's even a world left to win.